Hey, it's me again. I wanted to go over this crystal real quick. This thing is huge. Look how big it is. All right, this huge crystal is like 11.22 pounds, and it's a Lemurian um, crystal from Lemuria. Okay, so this big crystal, 11 pounds, 11 plus pounds, is from Brazil, from Minas Gerais. So this was from Brazil. It was shipped from Brazil. And I bought this from Brazil from a site from eBay. They still sell them, but they just don't sell anything like this, okay? I did win this bid. And let's just say that what I paid for this big crystal is nothing like what it's going for right now, okay? Let's just say I bought this at a very cheap price. I'm saying cheap because compared to what this goes for now, it was cheap to me. Because you can't find anything like this. Like this size, from Brazil, a Lemurian crystal. I mean, this kind of crystal, you can't find this. And if you do find it, you will have to pay a very heavy price for it, a premium for it, okay? I'm talking like thousands of dollars for this size and quality and the fact that it's real, it's authentic, what it is. This is a Lemurian crystal, and let me just show you what it looks like. Okay, this is a twin flame manifestation soulmate crystal. So you see how like you have two crystals attached to each other, and this is really heavy. So this right here, this is the male, okay, crystal. And the one that it's attached to is the female crystal, okay? So how do you know which one is which? Well, the female or feminine version is more opaque, cloudy. It's not as clear. So that's how you know this is the female or feminine version crystal, okay? And the masculine, male crystal is this one right here. It's bigger, it's clear, and notice how they're both attached to each other. So they both grew up like this. They formed like this, attached to each other. So they're little like twins. So this is a soulmate crystal, okay? So this kind of crystal is good for anyone that is in a partnership, relationship, whatever, because this will help keep you two together if you're supposed to be together. Now, if you're not supposed to be together, you will not be together, okay? Because this crystal will manifest that. So basically, this crystal will only manifest your real match. Basically, the one that you're supposed to be with, like this right here, the one you're supposed to be attached to. If it's not your match, it's not gonna be able to stick like this, okay? So yeah, I mean, at that time, like, they said a lot of things, and I was just like, wow. But then I was just like, okay, this is really pretty. I just like this crystal, the look and everything. I mean, look at, like, it has a bunch of, like, things to it, okay, attached to it. I didn't know. Now I'm figuring out that, oh my gosh, like, I actually own a crystal that is, like, very valuable. Not only is this a Lemurian crystal from Lemuria, the continent existed before Atlantis existed, okay? So this came from the first continent that sunk in the middle of the ocean. So Lemuria sunk the continent, the whole continent. The Pacific Ocean, that's where Lemuria used to be. So that wasn't an ocean before. That was a continent, and it was called Lemuria. So this is where this crystal came from. So this crystal is like millions of years old. It's that old. It's really old. And it has all of the codes and downloads and information stored within this. This is like a giant flash drive. It stores all the memories, all the information that was contained from that continent, Lemuria, okay? So Lemuria existed first, okay? We know it now as the Pacific Ocean, but this Pacific Ocean used to be Lemuria, the continent, and then it sunk, and this is why we now have a Pacific Ocean. So that continent used to occupy the shape of Pacific Ocean. So that's why it's tied to like the West. It's tied to the California coast, that whole coastline, the West Coast, the East Coast of Asia, Hawaii, the islands, all of that surrounding, basically whatever surrounds the Pacific Ocean, that is tied to Lemuria. Okay, and some of you have probably heard of Mount Shasta. Well, it's true. That mountain in California, and I was gonna go there, and I was gonna bring this, and I was gonna charge it in that mountain. You know, just to see what would happen, because I knew like this crystal would need to be charged in that location, Mount Shasta, because that's where the Lemurians, who escaped that flood, that collapse, they had a head start because they had a warning, and they were able to move away to another location. They spread out all over the world. So they have the ability to shapeshift, to be invisible, and to live underground, because they knew that if they were seen, then forces that were very low vibration would try to end them in their existence, and it wasn't going to happen. Okay, so yeah, this is how big this is. Look at this, is like 14 inches. Okay, and it weighs 11.22 pounds. It's really heavy. I mean, this thing is heavy, and it's two crystals combined. It's two crystals, the feminine crystal and the masculine crystal. And I'll show you, when you stand it up like that, you're not going to be able to see the whole thing, but you will see how you have to be careful with this, because if you just drop it, it will break the surface of something. Okay, but this right here, let me see if we can see it. Okay, so this masculine is actually holding up the feminine right here. When you're able to hold it upright, like I am right now, you're able to see that it's actually the masculine holding up the feminine. So this masculine crystal, the clear one, is really holding up the feminine crystal, the cloudy one. But they're attached to each other. So they're literally a part of each other. You have the divine masculine right here and the divine feminine right here. Yep. So it makes sense, you know, what I've been saying is now shown in the crystal that existed millions of years ago. This was from that continent, Lemuria, or the continent Mau, M-A-U, Mu, I don't know, whatever. It starts with an M. So basically, before the flood happened, before they collapsed, that continent collapsed down the ocean, they were able to store all that into this crystal. So all the information from that continent, Lemuria, Mau, before it collapsed into the Pacific Ocean, it's all stored here. Yep. So you will be able to access all the information. See, you already made a mark on this table. So you have to be very careful, because this thing is heavy and it's a crystal. Okay. See this right here? I'll show you. Oh my God. It just made... Okay. So this right here, all you do is just press it. You'd rub it. That's like the key to awakening this crystal. And you just rub it. You touch it like I'm touching now. And you will be able to access the downloads and information. Like what I'm doing now. Like you just touch it, you know, because it's just so pretty. You can't help but touch it and feel it and explore it and all that. But just do that. Whatever your intuition is telling you to do it. And then that information will transfer into your consciousness. So your intuition will be able to transfer the information that you're accessing to. So your intuition will access the information within this crystal. And then your intuition will tell you what happened. And that's how you get those downloads. So by touching this crystal and feeling it, exploring it, you know, and knowing the properties of this type of crystal. This is a soulmate twin flame crystal, because there's two crystals attached to each other. This is really big. I mean, you're not going to be able to find a Lemurian crystal like this of this size, but I did. And yeah, all I can say is that this is why I'm vibing at a really high vibration. It just seems like this crystal knew things before I knew things. And it was able to predict things that I didn't know would happen, but they're happening now. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you this real quick. Let me put it down. So what I do is I just lay them down like this because you're able to see like, let me show you. Here we go. So you see how like if you were to turn this on its side, you'll be able to see that this is the masculine crystal holding up the feminine crystal. So this is what it looks like. Do you see how like it's holding up the feminine crystal? The same way as humans on planet Earth, the masculine is supposed to hold up the feminine. But I'm not going to get into that. All I can say is that this is the illustration of how the divine masculine and divine feminine should be. This is what it should look like. Okay? And if you don't understand this concept or it just seems too complicated, then you're not a divine masculine or feminine. You're not. No. You're not there yet. You're just a masculine and you're just a feminine. You're just a male or you're just a female. But you're not divine at all. So when you get to that point where you become divine, then you will start to understand the significance of this crystal. Okay? Let me put it down. This is heavy. Oh my god, it's heavy. It's big. Here. There. Now you're able to see. You're able to see. Oh, look at that. Wow. So you're able to see that the masculine is able to hold up the feminine. And they're attached to each other. So they move like they're one unit, but they're really separate entities attached to each other as if they're one unit. So you have the divine masculine and the divine feminine, okay, two souls combined, and they create one entity, okay? That's what it's supposed to look like, and that's how it's supposed to be, okay? But forces have corrupted, manipulated, and controlled this narrative to the point where you don't see this anymore because they change everything into their own definition and narrative. Yep. And portrayed the lie as truth and portrayed the truth as a lie. This is the truth. This is how it's supposed to be. Okay? But it's up to you if you want to believe this or not. You have that free will. You have that choice. But for those who understand this concept, this is for you. Okay? You were meant to see this and hear this at this time. And this is a confirmation of what you already knew. This is proof of what you already knew. This right here in this crystal. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. When I visit Mount Shasta and see that mountain, I'm going to bring this crystal with me. And I'm going to charge this crystal in that mountain, Mount Shasta, under the sun, hoping that I will see one of those Lemurians, shapeshifters, because they do live under that mountain. And that's where all the sightings have showed up, like UFOs, weird stuff, clouds, all that. And it surprises a lot of people because they don't expect that kind of activity to happen on a mountain. But to me, it's like, it makes sense to me, because I know the history of those shapeshifters. They vibe really high. They vibe like in the fifth dimension. And this is why they're hiding, because they would not have been able to survive this long if they had been visible, because they would have been wiped out already by lower vibing forces that would expose them for who they really are. Okay, so that's my hope that by bringing this crystal, this Lemurian crystal, this size from Brazil, from the same mine that they were stored in. Like these crystals were on the ground, left there on purpose, so that one day somebody would find them, and then that person would be able to unlock these codes and be able to talk about the continent Lemuria that sunk down, the continent that existed before Atlantis, the continent. So you have what is known now as the Pacific Ocean, which used to be the continent of Lemuria, but it's sunk down. So that's what you know now. That's what you know now as the Pacific Ocean. And then Lemuria created another continent, and that's known as the Atlantis, the continent that sunk down. So that's what we know now as the Atlantic Ocean. So you have Pacific, West Coast, and Atlantic, East Coast. 2 oceans. So that's Lemuria, West Coast, versus Atlantis, East Coast. So you have 2 oceans competing, when the reality is that there weren't oceans before. There were continents. And this was the original. This was the first continent that existed. This was the continent, Lemuria. They created the continent of Atlantis. And this continent sunk. So the people from Atlantis were able to witness the end of this continent, Lemuria. They witnessed it. They saw it happen. And people from Lemuria were trying to prevent that from happening to Atlantis. But because, they led to their own demise. Because of the ego and greed and corruption and all that. And they became less spiritual and more greedy. So that led to their destruction. And that is why Atlantis sunk into the ocean. And it is known now as the Atlantic Ocean. Yep. So that's what I know of those 2 continents that sunk. And there's more to the story, but I'm not going to reveal that right now. That's just basically, what happened in history. And people need to know that, because if they don't know that, then they will repeat the same cycle. It will happen again until they learn what caused it in the first place. Yep. So the same cause that sunk and ended Lemuria and Atlantis is going to be the same cause that will end the U.S. Any continent or country that is a superpower, they will end in the same way. Destruction. Yep. So anyways, I just thought I would share that. I hope I helped you in some way, and I will talk to you again soon.